Hi students, my name is Laura Antones and I am your virtual content specialist for multilingual learners. And today on Unit 8, Day 15, Drafting Species Survival Plans, we are going to be solving some living environment questions together that require you to explain or describe problems, concepts, or ideas. All right, so let's do some practice together. Stay with me and let's begin. For the purpose of today's video, we are going to be using January 2019 Living Environment Regents Exam, questions 62 to 64. Let's read together. Base your answers to questions on the next two slides on the information below and on your knowledge of biology. So before we start with the questions, we can see that we have two sets of information. On the right of the page, we do have a graph that shows changes in 4 Yellowstone amphibian populations. So if I read this first, I have an idea in my mind of what the reading is going to be about. So now I know that I'm going to be talking about amphibians. So I'm doing kind of a preview before reading the entire paragraph. So now let's go ahead and read, and then we're going to go back to the graph. No worries. And as I always say, please make sure that you're highlighting, circling keywords, and writing down, annotating your own ideas as you read with me. Dr. Liz Hadley studied the ecology of Yellowstone National Park for 30 years, specifically the amphibians inhabiting the park for 20 of those years. Dr. Hadley studied 46 ponds in 1992-1993. Of these, 43 supported amphibians. From 2006 to 2008, only 38 of the original 46 ponds contained water. The graph on this slide represents population data for 4 amphibian species collected by Dr. Hadley during 1992 to 1993 and 2006 and 2008. All right, so now let's go back to the graph. And as we can see, on the y-axis, we do have the number of populations found, and that number starts at 0 and it keeps increasing as I move up on the axis. On the x-axis, on the horizontal axis, I do have different species of amphibian populations. You have the tiger salamander, the western chorus frog, the Columbia spotted frog, and the western toad. All right, and I also can see how the light gray represents the first time that she's taking data from 1992, 1993. And the second set, a little bit darker, it's from 2006 and 2008, and it corresponds to the second time that the scientist is taking data. All right? Very good. So as I can see from the graph, from the first time in light gray to the second time in dark gray, there is a big difference on the number of populations found. And as you can see in the graph, it seems that the numbers decrease as we move through the years. So I do have valuable information in my mind now, and I am ready to read the question. So let's move to the next slide. A, explain why such a long-term study is more likely to be accepted by Dr. Hadley's peers than one that took place over a shorter period of time. So before we start, just remember what the word explain means. Explain does basically mean that you are going to make an idea, a situation, a problem clear to someone by describing it in more detail or revealing relevant facts or ideas, okay? In other words, you really need to make sure that the person that is reading your paper is able to understand why this long-term study is likely to be accepted by Dr. Hadley's peers. That means by other people reviewing this work than one that takes place over a shorter period of time. Remember that another tip that you can use is to rephrase the sentence in your mind. So I always ask myself, so what is the question asking about? So the question wants me to explain. That means to write a sentence, two sentences, basically why a longer study is better than a shorter study. Okay, so let's do that. Think about it, write down your answer, pause the video, and then come back to it. Okay, so yeah, obviously a longer study provides more data, and that data may be more accurate, and that will result in the findings being more reliable. And also remember that many times these key changes in the environment take place over prolonged periods of time. That means that it takes time to see a difference, a change in the environment, and that's why long-term work is essential to document these changes. All right, so but as I said before, the longer a study is, the more data the study is going to give us, and therefore the more accurate it's going to be. Another trick that I use in the exams is that whenever I finish writing my sentence, I go back to the question and I really ask myself, did I answer the question with what I wrote? And the answer is yes, right? I really explain why long-term studies are basically more acceptable among the community experts than short-term studies. So now we can go to question B. Describe the trends in the amphibian populations over the course of the study. Support your answer with information from the graph. So luckily, we have already checked the graph and we have seen how the population of different amphibian populations have been diminishing over the years, all right? But now we have to describe. That means, again, we have to give details, making sure the person that is reading our text is understanding what we want to say. And when they ask us for the trend means a general direction in which something is developing or changing. And this is basically the general change in the amphibian populations in this case. All right, so think about this question and pause the video and come back whenever you have your question ready. Since we have to support our answer with information from the graph, I'm just pasting the graph in here so you can take a look at it again. So now pause your video and write your final answer. So there are different options to answer the question. One of them will be generally the numbers of populations decreased from 1992 to 1993 and to from 2006 to 2008. And we can see that in the graph. There is a downward trend and the numbers of amphibian populations are generally decreasing. But maybe you wanted to point out that the Western toad numbers remain the same. So another possibility for you to answer this question could have been only the Western toad population has remained the same. The population of frogs and salamanders have decreased, as we can see from the graph. All right, so those are two different ways to answer a question. And in those two different options, you're making sure that you are supporting your answer with information from the graph. Great, so let's go to our last question. Again, you need to explain how global warming could have affected Yellowstone frog and salamander habitats, resulting in changes in the population of these species. Again, think very carefully what you're going to say. Remember, you have to explain and you have to really make the relationship among global warming and Yellowstone and habitats and resulting in changes in the population of these species. So you really need to explain in detail and make sure that what you're writing makes sense and answers the question. Pause the video and then come back to it. So one possibility, and there are many right answers in here, could have been that global warming has likely caused 8 of the original 46 ponds to dry up, and this has reduced the size of the habitat available for frogs and salamanders. Maybe you wanted to say that the rain and snow patterns have changed in Yellowstone because of climate change, and therefore the habitats of species such as the salamanders and the frogs has been reduced. there are many different ways of getting this answer correct. And I am sure that you did a great job by answering yourself. So here's the end of this video. I hope this helped you to get used to the explain and describe questions in the Regents exam. My next few videos will be about Regents questions practice, so you can still have more opportunities to practice Regents questions with me. See you in the next video. Bye bye.